With some of mine, I was reading an article about Rutherford, Tennessee, and a group of children who were arrested and put incarcerated for something that wasn't even actually a crime. And they were fourth graders. And as I was reading the article, it said that in Tennessee, the juvenile incarceration rate for the entire state of Tennessee is only 5%. But in Rutherford, it's 48%. So
Mm.
first and foremost, that's a staggering 43%. Uh, and second, just the mere fact that fourth graders are arrested and then taken to a police station
Mm.
in a squad car and then jailed is insane. And I really want to say what's wrong with America, but then I already know what's wrong with America. And this idea of over policing, this idea of fantasizing that we do with television that puts police officers in the mind state that they are untouchable because of immunity, this idea that we glorify cops who break the law and the rules in the movies. So therefore, in real life, we have this ingrained in our mental. And this idea that we don't de-escalate. But now I'm starting to get a better picture of why we don't de-escalate, because why would an officer de-escalate a situation with 4-year-olds when the department just got a military tank? When you are in charge of arresting civilians, that doesn't add up. So it was something that struck a nerve. First and foremost, I have children, and I'm not even sure how I would react if I found out my fourth grader was arrested, and then you were criminally charging them for a scuffle at school, like, and and then having no one held accountable. It it really made it really made me think, but then it infuriated me to think that somebody's child was incarcerated because of a scuffle at school. So that's what's on my mind, and the idea that we need to policing needs to change. But first and foremost, it needs to start with accountability. It needs to be in a place where if a police officer is violating the law themselves, that lawsuit money cannot come out of taxpayer money. It has to come out of the police pension. And it should be one of those straightforward things where it's punitive and it multiplies every time there's a lawsuit. So the first lawsuit is $1 million. The next time it's 2 million. The next time it's 4 million. The next time is 8 million. And these are not even minimum. These are not even minimum. They're mandatory, right? So you go, how many lawsuits can you take before y'all don't have a pension? Because then what will eventually happen is good cops are going to have to start speaking up, because then you're going to realize, well, if I let you violate this person's civil rights, or in this case, if I let you arrest fourth graders for a schoolyard scuffle, fighting, pushing, yeah, we're going to lose $50 million. It's not worth it. And hopefully, hitting them in their pockets might be a start. The other thing is jail time, right? If you are going to plant evidence or do something of that nature, then it should be an automatic. If I was going to get 10 years for what you did, then you should automatically have to serve 10 years. And there should be no getting out on good behavior. So something has to be done with policing. Something has to be done because the sad part is we're just finding out about a culture that has already existed that we didn't know about because we didn't have cameras. And that's a scary, scary thought. And then the other part I'll finally say is there were people who were talking about this for years, and we just didn't listen.
You know the thing that frightened me, Paul, about this, and it's something that relates back to Brother Ishmael and the work that he's been doing, is I keep thinking about the mental impact on those young kids being incarcerated. Some of them were in solitary confinement. That young brother Remember
Yeah.
in the article, the mom was talking to him, and she said that she didn't think he was all right, and it made me think about the name you raised, Khalif Browder. It made me think about him, and it hurt me because as a black man, it's my job to protect them,
Mm.
and we couldn't even protect them.
Mm. I'll say this. I'll share this story. When I was in college, I had Professor Higgins, and the fact that I remember her name just speaks volumes. But she was my law professor. I've always had an affection for law. And long story short, at the end of our first class, she pulled me, the other black men, Hispanic men in class aside. She told us, "Don't you ever leave your house without this law book, ever." And it resonated with us. We knew why she said it. She didn't have to explain. She said, "Don't ever." And I want to say the very next class, which had been like the following Saturday, I'm walking home from school. I hear whoop, 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 flashing lights. I got my headphones on. I know what they're doing things, so I just keep walking. Next thing I know, I'm staring down the barrel of a Glock, and I'm surrounded by police officers. They have me like in a semicircle. And the police officers, proceed to where you're going, where you're coming from, blah, blah, blah. Me being the jerk that I am, after class, I'm like, I just came from college. I was in front of like 32 cameras. I have a bunch of witnesses. Can I go now? The cop is like, no. And the other cop is like, you just shot somebody. And I'm like, wow, that's a reach. And they weren't playing good cop, bad cop. It was just one cop that was being reasonable at the moment. Another cop who was like, you did this. And I understand, and this is going to sound crazy, but I understand that the cop is being pushy and being a jerk at this point because criminals don't often go, "Oh, you know what, officer, you got me. I'm the shooter. I was the one that killed Jerome." Like, criminals don't do that. It happens in the movies, but not in real life. And they asked me, can they search me? I told them I don't consent to a search. I told them they had no probable cause, that whole kind of thing. They totally disregarded it. And I proceeded to tell them that you are legally allowed to Terry frisk me since you're going to do it anyway, which is a light pat of the outside of the exterior of the clothing. You can't touch my genitals and you can't manipulate anything in my pockets. And one of the cops just looked at me like, you know a little bit too much right now. The other cop looked at me like, I don't care. And he's like, I'm going to go in your bag. And I'm like, you can't go in my bag. My book bag is locked. I'm like, so you're going to need a warrant for that. He proceeds to go into my bag anyway. He reaches in and he grabs my law book. He pulls it out and it says Intro to Criminal Law. And he looks at me for a split second, puts it back in my bag, zips it back up, locks it back, and he's like, you can go. And it was a surreal feeling. But then when I saw Khalif Browder years later, I thought how many times that could have been me. That this young man was incarcerated for a crime that he didn't commit. He was never charged, and then caught a charge while he was in jail. And the fear of going back to prison caused him to take his own life because his family didn't have $500 to pay the bond or something like that. And that was, it was scary. But then to think about how many young men in not just New York City, but nationwide don't have $500 to pay bond for a crime that they didn't commit, and they're just sitting in jail.